So, hello students, welcome to Sexual Reproduction Farming Plants Lecture 4. So today the targeted topics that we are supposed to complete include pollination, kinds of pollination, agents of pollination, and if possible, we are also going to try and cover outbreeding devices and pollen-pistil interaction. Okay. So in the previous 3 lectures on this chapter, we had completed up to megagametogenesis. That is, we have completed the total structure, properties, and developments of androecium and gynoecium. Now we are coming to pollination part. Okay. So I'm going to erase this part. Okay. It was kind of for you guys to have a glance of what are the topics that we're going to study today. So straight away starting with pollination. So up to now we have studied that in the androecium we observed that by different processes like microsporogenesis, microgametogenesis, we finally obtained pollen grains. Right. In 60% of the angiosperms, the pollen grains were pollinated in the 2-cell condition, and in the remaining 40% in the 3-cell conditions. You guys have to remember, in case you are still not clear about the concept of these topics, you can check out the videos present in Tutor AI YouTube channel. And apart from that, it's always advised that you guys go through NCERT well. And okay, so coming back to pollination, we have a pollen grain ready. So here in the female counterpart, we have stigma, style, ovary, and inside ovary. In the ovaries, we have observed megasporogenesis followed by megagametogenesis, and now the embryo sac is ready with the ovum. So okay, so now we have to devise some mechanism. We have to think of some mechanism so that they both can meet together. So so now I like you guys out to ponder that there is no devices that help these particular male gamete and female gamete to locomote. Okay, so the pollen grain that we observed or the cells in them, they don't have any locomotory organ that they by themselves they can get from androecium to gynoecium and do fertilization and the consequent stuff. No, it's not like that. We observe that neither the male gametes nor the female gametes have any motile structures, okay, that help them to locomote. Okay, so we have to take the help of some sort of agents. Okay, these agents are gonna act as you can say the carriers. Okay, they're gonna they're gonna, like, in the relation between this male and female gametes, they're gonna act as a catalyst. Okay, they're gonna bring the male gametes from the anther surface to the stigmatic surface, and from thereafter, like, there are some processes by which it is gonna meet the ovum. Okay, resulting in the formation of zygote and consequent developments. Okay, so pollination is a very key step. First, let me write the definition of pollination: the transfer of pollen grains, from anther to stigma is known as pollination. So the first point about pollination is it is a transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigmatic surface. Okay, as I've already discussed that the pollen grains or the ovum, neither of them are capable of locomotion. So there has to be some agents, like the agent are the pollinators or the agents of pollination. We're going to study about the next, and the process by which the pollen grains are being transferred from the from anther to the stigmatic surface, it is pollination. Okay, so the next, coming to the types of pollination. Okay, so let me just finally read the NCERT. See, both types of gametes are non-modal. It's a very clear line mentioned in the NCERT. You guys can underline it or box it or do whatever, so that you can say in questions like the question is like any form of questions can come, like which you are going to be given 5-6 statements. You have to identify how many of them are true, how many of them are false, and in that one statement might be both types of gametes in flowering plants are motile, so it's going to be a false statement. Both types of gametes are non-motile, so it's a very important statement. So pollination is a mechanism to achieve the objective. What is the objective? It is the transfer of pollen grains shipped from the anther to the stigma of a pistil is termed as pollination. Okay, so next, coming to the kinds of pollination. So sometimes it might be happening that I'm repeating a particular statement multiple times. It is just because I'm trying to emphasize on the importance of that particular statement. If I'm repeating something, if I'm a particular statement or a concept I'm repeating multiple times, I want to be engraved in your minds. Okay, you should study that. You should ponder upon that concept with greater importance. Okay, because NEET is such kind of an exam where 720 out of 720 is the highest score. So there is no scope of error if you're out to get in, if you're out to get into a good government college. Okay, so precision and accuracy both are very important. So coming back to kinds of pollination, so we can classify pollination into self-pollination and cross-pollination. I think this is an easy topic because everyone has studied about these in the earlier classes in 9th and 10th. Okay, so here we have self-pollination. Here we have cross-pollination. So what is self-pollination? It is transfer of pollen grains, from anther to stigma of a genetically similar flower. This is self-pollination. What is cross-pollination? The pollination. Okay, so like in terms of a detailed definition, you can write the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. I'm just writing it in short. The pollination between genetically different, genetically different flowers. Okay, so now what does this mean? See, here we have two flowers. So this is plant A and this is plant B. So in it, we have actually three flowers. So let me, kind of try and draw the structure. This is the sepals. Okay, I know this drawing is pretty bad, but nevertheless, I hope you are getting to understand what I'm trying to draw. It is a female reproductive hole. These are the male reproductive holes. Okay, and this is the petals. You can see it. Perhaps I should color it in red so that it's more presentable, I guess now. Okay, so this is one flower that we have. There's something I can do about it. Oh, just leave it. Let me just quickly draw other two flowers. Okay, so another sepal. I was trying that if in any way I could copy that stuff, but turns out it's a bit complex process. Let's not waste time in that. Let's quickly just draw the remaining structures. Okay, so what do we observe here? That we have two plants, plant A and plant B. In plant A, we have drawn two flowers, and in plant B, we have drawn a single flower. Okay, and just observe that all the flowers in this case are bisexual flowers. Okay, all the three flowers, they have the male, female reproductive hole as well as a male reproductive hole. Okay, all the three flowers. Okay, so what kind of pollination can we observe? Okay, it can happen that the anther from this particular the pollen grain from this particular anther can fall on this particular stigmatic surface. So what is this going to be? This is a transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of the same flower. Okay, this is known as autogamy. Okay, let me mark it as 1. This is 1. This is autogamy. So what is autogamy? That is within same flower. I'm writing it in short. The transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma within same flower of the same plant. Okay, so it is a type of self-pollination. Why? Because like as we are talking about a single flower, so they are genetically identical. Okay, so if you observe over here, what does it say? From anther to stigma of a genetically similar flower. So autogamy is a form of self-pollination. Next, what can happen? So, so the pollen grain from this particular anther, it may travel all the way to here. So what is this happening? The transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of a different flower, but of the same plant. Okay, this is important. Okay, different flower, but of the same plant. This particular phenomenon is known as geitonogamy. So what is geitonogamy? We have different flower, but same plant. Next, what can happen? Now the third case. Now, okay, I'm considering the same anther. Okay, so the pollen from this anther. Okay, let me change the color. So the pollen from this anther can travel all the way to the stigmatic surface of plant B. So what is happening? The transfer of pollen grains from anther of one flower in plant A to the stigma of another flower in another plant, that is plant B in this case. So transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of different plant altogether. This is known as xenogamy. It is different plant. And geitonogamy and xenogamy can be together grouped into allogamy. Okay. Okay. So what did we observe here? So we observed, so we have three kinds of pollinations. Autogamy, transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of same flower. Autogamy. Okay, it's a form of self-pollination. Next, coming is allogamy, and in allogamy we have observed two parts: geitonogamy and xenogamy. What is geitonogamy? Transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of different flower but of the same plant. Different flower, same plant. Geitonogamy. Next is xenogamy, transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of different flower of different plant. So the plant is different altogether. Okay. So now the thing is, there is, a language twist in terms of geitonogamy. So what is it? I'm not writing it. Just hear me out. So in geitonogamy, what are we observing? The pollen grain is being transferred from anther to stigma of different flower, but of the same plant. So it is of the same plant. So genetically it is similar, right? So like we are talking of a single plant, right? So the flowers that particular plant is going to produce are going to be genetically identical, right? So if you consider genetically, then it's a form of self-pollination, right or not? In geitonogamy, what is happening? The pollen grains are being transferred from anther to stigma of different flower, that is true, but of the same plant. It is of the same plant, so its genetic constitution is identical. So genetically, it's a form of self-pollination. But if we talk mechanically, that is, like it is a mechanical process. The pollen grains are being transferred by a pollinator, by a pollinating agent or whatever. Okay. So, pardon. So, in terms of mechanically, it is a form of cross-pollination because we are traveling to a different flower. So, geitonogamy, we are having a fun thing here that it is in terms of the physical process involved, mechanically, it is a form of cross-pollination where the pollen grain is being transferred to a different flower, but genetically, it is a form of self-pollination because it is being transferred to a different flower, but of the same plant. So it's genetically identical. Okay. So what are the topics that we have covered till now? We have covered pollination. We have covered kinds of pollination, self-pollination, cross-pollination, autogamy, geitonogamy, xenogamy. Now, coming to contrivances of self and cross-pollination. Contrivances. See, these concepts are very, very important. See, as wait a second. As I've already mentioned, NCERT is a very ridiculous book. Okay. So, like, you will find some concepts have been mentioned just in the diagram. Okay. You might remember that in case of this position of, anatropous ovule, they've just mentioned it in the labeling of the diagram. Okay. So, I have covered all the related stuff as well. But see, in these terms, NCERT is very ridiculous book. They will just touch the concept in just a single line, but you have to study that concept. Okay. So now when I'm going to touch these topics like contrivances, self, cross-pollination, some terms, some concepts, you might feel they're not directly given in the NCERT. But if you just go through the questions given in the NCERT or some hidden lines, you will find that all the topics that I'm covering here are there in the NCERT. So each and every single one of them are important. Okay. So do pay attention. First is, what does contrivances mean? So so you can Google it. Okay, it's English. There is nothing biology involved in this. Contrivances means strategies. So you can take it like this: strategies of self-pollination. So first, I'm coming to self-pollination. Strategies of self-pollination. So the first one is going to be bisexuality. Bisexuality as in production of bisexual flower. Okay, so now what does this mean? So consider if a flower, like in this case. So in this particular flower, we observe autogamy. Why did we observe? Because the same flower had the male reproductive hole, the female reproductive hole as well. And that's why we observed that self-pollination could occur, autogamy could occur. Okay. But consider the case where if, like by any chance, this female whole would not have been there. So in this case, in any possible scenario, it is not possible that this particular anther can drop into the this particular pollen from this anther can drop onto stigmatics of the same flower. So the self-pollination is not possible at all. So the primary condition for a plant, for a flower to be able to operate self-pollination, it should be bisexual. The same flower must contain the male and the female reproductive holes. Then only it is possible to conduct self-pollination. Okay. So bisexuality is one of the strategies for self-pollination. Next is production of clisto. Okay. The next is production of clistogamous flowers. So what is clistogamous flowers? Okay. So let me just, erase this. Clistogamous and chasmogamous flowers. So what is clistogamous flower? What is chasmogamous flowers? So clistogamous flowers, in this particular condition, the flower remains closed throughout the life cycle. So the flower remains closed throughout the life cycle. And in chasmogamous flowers, what happens? The flowers open at maturity. Now think of it. Let me just draw the diagram in here. So for example, we have a flower. Okay. So this is the female hold. This is the male hold, androecium, gynoecium. So now this is the corolla. Okay. So now it's closed. Okay. Now, in case of clistogamous flowers, what is going to happen that even when the flower is mature, like throughout their life cycle, the corollas are going to be in this condition. The flower will remain closed throughout. Now, see if there's an external pollen from an anther from another flower, and so now there are pollen grains. They are trying to fall onto the stigmatic surface, but since the flower is closed, the petals are closing. They are not being able to fall onto the stigmatic surface. So it is preventing any external pollen to fall onto the stigmatic surface, preventing cross-pollination. Okay, so let me just draw it. Preventing cross-pollination. And so now the pollens of these anthers, they also cannot go out because the flower is covered. So here also cross-pollination is being prevented. So the only option the pollens of these anthers have are to fall on this surface. So this is an remarkable, excellent adaptation, you can say, or strategies that the plants have devised to boost self-pollination. So if the flowers are remaining like this throughout the life cycle, they're not opening at maturity. So when they're not opening, external pollens can't fall onto the stigmatic surface, neither can the pollens from the anthers get out of the flower. Okay. So this is what happens in case of clistogamous flowers. In chasmogamous flower, what happens? In chasmogamous flower, the flower opens at maturity. So it opens at maturity. Now it's open for cross-pollination. External pollens can fall onto the stigmatic surface. The pollens from the anthers of this flower can also travel to other flowers. Okay. So this is clistogamous flowers and chasmogamous flowers. Okay. Let me just do one thing. Let me just keep the diagram. Done. So clistogamy, in this particular condition, the flower remains closed throughout the life cycle and it facilitates the process of autogamy. Okay. Obviously, like, this is very clear. Like the flower showing clistogamy is known as clistogamous flowers, and the opposite event of clistogamy is chasmogamy, and the flowers which exhibit chasmogamy is chasmogamous flower. So now let me just draw a difference table of clistogamous and chasmogamous flowers. Okay, let me just draw it in blue. So the first point, the flower never opens, or the flower remains closed throughout its lifespan. You can change the language, but the concept is just going to remain the same. And the flowers open at maturity. Next point is no pollinator is required. So what is a pollinator? They are the agents of pollination. These are the particular agents which cause the pollination. So now in case of clistogamous flowers, the flowers are not opening. So for the transfer of pollination, you don't require any agent, right? So like whatever is going to happen, it's going to happen inside the flower. So no pollinator is required. And in case of chasmogamous flowers, pollinator may or may not be required. Pollinator may or may not be required. So why are we saying may or may not be required? See, in case of chasmogamous, okay, so in case of chasmogamous flowers, the flowers are opening at maturity. So, but in case that particular chasmogamous flower is bisexual, okay, so now from the anther, the pollens are gonna be released. So now it has option that it might, just self-pollinate falling on the stigmatic surface of the same flower, or by the help of pollinators, it can go to different flower. It can do the same plant or different plant. So in case of, it's not that chasmogamous flowers only conduct cross-pollination. No, even chasmogamous flowers can exhibit self-pollination as well as cross-pollination. But clistogamous flowers, they only exhibit self-pollination. In clistogamous flowers, you have no scope of cross-pollination. But in chasmogamous flowers, you have scope for both. And in case autogamy is happening, the pollen is having transferred from the anther to stigma of the same flower, then pollinator is not required. That's why we are saying pollinator may or may not be required. In chasmogamous flowers, the flowers are opening at maturity, and therefore what happens that self-pollination as well as cross-pollination, autogamy, heterogamy, xenogamy, any form of pollination can happen. Okay, so now this flower is open for everything. The pollen might fall from the anther to the stigma of the same flower, or it can be carried by a pollinator to some other flower. Okay, so that's why we are saying pollinator may or may not be required. And so the last point, autogamy is observed. Autogamy. See, I've discussed this point. Autogamy, heterogamy, xenogamy are observed. Okay, done. So now comes example. I'm not giving any extra examples, just sticking to the NCERT. Viola, also known as common pansy. Oxalis, commelina. These flowers have both clistogamous and chasmogamous. So I'm writing in short, clisto and chasmo flowers. This is very important. Okay, this is a bit tricky as well. Viola, oxalis, and commelina. It's not that they have only clistogamous or only chasmogamous. They have both. The both word is important here. Viola, oxalis, commelina. They have both clistogamous and chasmogamous flowers. Okay. So these are this example is directly taken from the NCERT. So you can take note of that. So we have completed this the contrivances of self-pollination. Now coming to contrivances of cross-pollination. Some writing strategies. Okay, strategies of cross-pollination. First point is just the opposite of what was the first point of self-pollination. The first point of self-pollination was bisexuality. Here it is, unisexuality. So clearly, like if a flower, like if the plant produces unisexual flowers, so now a flower is either male, like it either has a male reproductive hole or a female reproductive hole. So now invariably the plant has to opt for cross-pollination because there is no scope of self-pollination. So you don't have a female reproductive hole. So yeah, you require stigmatic surface where the pollen will land, the pollen will grow and go and fertilize the ovum. So now the female reproductive hole is not there in the flower. So self-pollination is not an option. So unisexuality is a very primary fundamental strategy that is utilized by the flowers to enable a cross-pollination. It is first is unisexuality. Next is dichogamy. It is maturity of sex organs at different times. So now in in self-pollinating plants, what do we observe? In case of self-pollinating plants, the male reproductive hole and female reproductive hole, they mature at the same time. It is observed in case of self-pollinated plants. Okay. But in cross-pollination, a strategy that is used is dichogamy, which is the maturity of the sex organs at different times. Okay. In cases, the male is maturing before the female, and in other cases, the female is maturing before the male. Okay. This is a strategy used to prevent self-pollination. Like it is a strategy which boosts cross-pollination. So we have two conditions in terms of this. Let me just change the ink. Proto-androus. I think the term itself is self-explanatory. and it is protogynous. So androecium matures before gynosium, and protogynous, like it is self-explanatory as well. Gynosium, whatever, matures before androecium. You can take the examples. The example of protoandrous include sunflower, cotton. The example of protogynous include ficus. Okay. The third is hercogamy. So I'm not writing a detailed definition. I'm just writing, the key highlight point. Okay. Presence of physical barrier. Okay, this is good. Presence of physical barrier. Presence of physical barrier. So now what does this mean? I'm, giving you a detailed statement. In this particular condition, the male and female sex organs are separated with the help of some physical barrier. Like the male and female sex organs, they're separated by the presence of a physical barrier which prevents self-pollination. So now how does it happen? So, okay, I think this is enough space. So here we have the sepals. This is the female sex organ. This is, the male sex organ, the male reproductive organ. But, okay, no. I have to give more space over here. But now what is happening? Okay, I think, let's draw this diagram in a different. So this is the corolla. Okay, this is the corolla over here. Or this, so what is happening? So now this is the male reproductive. So what are we observing? This is the male reproductive hold. This is the female reproductive hold. So now in between them, this particular corolla is acting as a physical barrier between the androecium, the male sex organ, and gynosium, the female sex organ. This condition is known as hercogamy. So now what is happening? It is a bisexual flower, but self-pollination is prevented because this corolla itself is acting as a physical barrier, preventing the pollen grains from being transferred from this anther to this stigma. Okay, so this is the condition of hercogamy. And the last is heteromorphism. Heteromorphism. So in this condition, what happens? The flower develops sex organs at different heights. So another, if in case, for example, in any exam, maybe board exam or whatever, the difference comes between self-pollination and cross-pollination. You can, just consider one set of points. Like I have given you 4 points for cross-pollination. Consider all of them and just do the reverse for self-pollination. So like the first point here is unisexuality in case of cross-pollination. It's just going to be bisexuality in case of self-pollination. In you're going to say that in self-pollination we have cleistogamy. Okay, cleistogamy. In cross-pollination we have chasmogamy. Okay. Next, dichogamy. The maturity is at different times in case of cross-pollination, maturity at same time in case of self-pollination. So these are pretty easy things. You can do it on your own. Heteromorphism is the flowers develop sex organs at different heights. Okay. So because here we are observing three set of sex organs. So let's see. Here we are observing tall androecium, tall male sex organ, moderate female sex organ. Here is tall female sex organ, short male sex organ. Here we are observing short female sex organ, medium male sex organ. So here we are observing the sex organs, the flowers are developing sex organs at different heights. Now the thing to be noted is pollination would occur between sex organs of same height. Now the question is, why? Why? The answer is they have same time of maturity. So the sex organs of same height, they have the same time of maturity, and that's why we would observe pollination between them. So here, what are the points that we're going to observe? So this pollination to this, this pollination to this, and this pollination to this. This is what we are going to observe. Okay, this is heteromorphism. The flower develops sex organs at different heights. The pollination occurs between sex organs of same height because they have the same time of maturity. Okay, example, yeah, okay, yeah, I just missed this part. So example of heteromorphism include oxalis. Example of hercogamy include calotropis. It is observed in calotropis. Hercogamy is observed in calotropis. Uh, Heteromorphism is observed in oxalis. I've given you the examples for proto-androus and protogynous condition. And unisexuality is also very well known, right? So this is nothing complex about it. So we have covered significant number of topics. We have covered pollination. We have covered kinds of pollination. And we have also covered the contrivances, that is strategies for self and cross pollination. Next, we are going to move on to pollinating agents. Probably this is going to be the last topic for today. We're going to cover the pollinating agents, different kind like wind pollinated, water pollinated, insect and flower pollinated plants, and the characteristics. Okay, so this is probably one of the last topic that we're going to cover today. I think probably, as you can guess, I'm not in the best of my health. So it is my advice to you guys to, take care of your health, because during your preparation phase, your physical, mental, as well as social well-being is of utmost importance. So do take care of that. Okay. So coming back, pollinating agents. So why do we require pollinating agents? As I've already mentioned, pollen grain is non-motile. So not only pollen grain, like both the male and the female gametes, they are non-motile. So they require some agent. So they require some agent that would, act as the messenger between them and, cause their union. So what happens, these pollinating agents, they take the pollen from the anther and it takes the pollen along with it and drops it over the stigmatic surface. So this is acting, as a vehicle between both of them. So pollinating agents can be classified into, one is non-living agent, other is living agent. So non-living agent, they include air and water. And living agent, we have a significantly long list. They include insects, birds, bats, snail, snake. And in insects also, I can classify it as ants and honeybees. So you might find, many such examples, but I'm just, highlighted quite a few of them. Okay. So now before going any further, let's just take a minute or two to, just go through the NCERT, but all the topics are covered till now. Kinds of pollination done, orthogamy. Okay. So I'm repeating it. Do read the NCERT more than 5 times. Okay. After you go through my lectures, the concepts are going to be clear. Study the NCERT. I hope that you are able to understand each and every line, every single diagram drawn there. So after, okay. Agents of pollination. Okay. So now first we are going to study of, first we are going to cover air, water, then we are going to go to these. First is air pollinated plants. So as the name suggests, plants in which the pollinator is air. So air is acting as a pollinator in this case. So anemophily. So what is anemophily? Anemophily is the method, process. Process is a more suitable word in this case. Anemophily, the process in which the air acts as a pollinator, transferring transferring pollen from anther to the stigmatic surface. So when air is acting as a pollinator, we are naming that condition as anemophily, and the flowers which exhibit air pollination, they're anemophilous flowers. Or okay, you can say anemophilous plants as well. Okay. So the plants in which the flowers are pollinated by air, they are known as anemophilous plants. Okay. So you can form these definitions. This is not that significant, but what is important is you have to know anemophily refers to air pollination. So now first thing first is examples. Members of grass family, we have maize, wheat, sugarcane, bamboo. So now it's the features of air pollinated plants. So flowers are without color, odor, or nectar. So now what? So now here you require to have this conceptual clarity. So why do flowers show color, have odor, or produce nectar? They act as a gift for the pollinators. So like for example, we will observe this in case of insect pollinators. So the flowers have characteristic odor or characteristic color to attract the particular pollinator. Okay, so they produce nectar. It like the nectar is produced as a reward for the pollinator. So you can think of it as you can think of this in the this way that the pollinator is coming, it is helping the plant by pollinating the pollen, and in return it is gathering nectar. So it, a give and take system. Okay, so the flowers, they have the flowers having characteristic odor, characteristic color, or produce nectar to attract its pollinators. But in case of air pollinated plants, we don't require any such characteristics because, like, obviously air is omnipresent, right? So you don't require any specific character, like specific color, specific order to attract air. No, the wind is going to flow anyway. So flowers are without color, odor, or nectar in air pollinated plants. Now the third point is the pollen grains are lightweight and non-sticky. So now this is also a pretty self-explanatory point. The pollen grains out to be lightweight and non-stick because these pollen grains are being carried by the air so that they can be carried for longer distances. It requires to be light. If the pollen grains is comparatively heavy, then the wind will not be able to carry it. So we require lightweight pollen grains, and it has to be non-stick so that it just doesn't stick on any random surface that falls upon. Okay. So the fourth point. In Pinus, pollen grains develop special wing-like structure to facilitate pollination. So in Pinus, what do we observe? That the pollen grains, so here also, the Pinus is also an example of an air pollinated plant. So in Pinus, what we observe is that the pollen grains, they develop special wing-like structure. So now, because of this wing-like structure, it can cover greater distances. So like it helps, the pollen grain to be pollinated by air. So this is a special mechanism is adopted by Pinus. So the next is stigma is hairy and highly branched. So why is it so? So that branch, I think branch. So why is it so that the stigma is hairy and highly branched so that it can catch more number of pollens? For example, consider this, like if this is my stigma, it's constricted, right? So now, for example, this is, so wind is flowing like this and they have a lot of pollens. So see, only this volume, like the air is flowing, right? So the pollens in particular, this volume of air has a chance to be captured on this. But if now it is like hairy and highly branched, so this is now my stigmatic surface. Okay, so now wind is flowing. So see, I'm being able to cover a greater area. Okay, so like this amount of wind is flowing. Okay, and all of them have pollen, all of them are carrying pollens. So because of having hairy and highly branched stigma, I have a greater chance of grabbing the pollen grains. Okay, so like this is our stigma. This is the pollens coming. I can grab greater amount of pollens. But if it would have been constricted, only a small amount, I have a chance of grabbing a small amount of pollen. So to increase the chance of grabbing more number of pollen grains, the stigma is hairy and highly branched. Next is ovules are produced in lesser number to ensure pollination. So like obviously, I think it has been very clear by now that air pollination is not that good a sure process. So okay, so there are multiple cases when the pollen grains can be wasted. So in what is happening, the pollen grains are being carried by air. So they can drop off somewhere during the course of its journey. It may not fall on the stigmatic surface. So there's a lot of chance of wastage of pollen. So what we observe is that pollen grains are produced in huge numbers, but ovules are produced in lesser numbers to ensure that all the ovules are pollinated, all the ovules are fertilized. Okay, so to ensure pollination and proper fertilization, ovules are produced in lesser numbers, but pollen grains are produced in huge numbers, because you can clearly see that there is a huge scope for wastage of pollen. So it is being carried by the wind. It may drift away to some other direction. In case some wind or turbulence is happening, it might destroy the whole set of pollens which is being carried. So there are a variety of possibilities. Okay, so this is then that's why. So we produce in not we air pollinated plants, they produce huge number of pollen grains, but lesser number of ovules to ensure pollination. So that's all we have for air pollinated plants, that is anemophilous plants. So next we are moving on to water pollinated plants. Okay. So the water pollinated plants, hydrophily. So water is acting as a pollinating agent. This condition is known as hydrophily. Such flowers or such plants are hydrophilous plants. Okay. This is very straightforward. So first coming to examples, obviously examples are very important. So water acting as a pollinating agent is a rare event. It's a pretty rare event and is limited to about 30 genera of aquatic plants, mostly monocot. So water pollination is a pretty rare event. So think of it, only in 30 genera, like 30 genesis, we are observing water pollination, that too in aquatic plants. Out of them, mostly are monocots. Okay. So examples we have. In examples also, I'm going to cover a concept. It is examples include Vallisneria, Hydrilla, Zoostera. Zoostera, also known as seagrass. So now here we have a highlight concept. Okay. So I don't know why sometimes my iPad pen is glitching. Anyways, so Vallisneria and Hydrilla, whatever. So these are scientific names, they are required to be underlined. So in Vallisneria and Hydrilla, what are we observing? We observe epihydrophily. So what exactly is epihydrophily? Pollination on water surface. So what is pollination? I think after all the lecture, after all the study we have done today, pollination, the phenomenon of pollination is pretty clear, right? The transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. So now, in case of Vallisneria and Hydrilla, we are observing epihydrophily. That is, pollination is occurring on the water surface. Okay. Okay, so let me just go through the NCERT ones. See, in Vallisneria, the female flower reaches the surface of water by the long stalk, and the male flowers or pollen grains are released on the surface of the water, and they are carried passively by water currents. So what does passively means? That there is no usage of ATP in that. Okay, so the pollen grains are released on the surface of the water and they are carried by water currents. No energy is involved here. Like energy is like in the form, like we are not utilizing ATP or energy is being used over here. They're passively being carried by the water currents. Okay. Okay, I'm writing this point as well. Carried passively by water currents. In Zoostera, that is seagrass, what we observe is hypohydrophily. And it means pollination underwater. Getting to the line of NCERT, in another group of water pollinated plants, such as seagrasses, female flowers remain submerged in water and the pollen grains are released inside the water. Okay. The pollen grains in many such species are long, ribbon-like, and they are carried passively inside the water. So in both the cases, we observe that the pollen grains are being carried passively. No ATP, no direct energy intake or usage, whatever. Okay. So in both the cases, the pollen grains are being carried passively. No energy, no form of ATP usage, energy uptake is involved. Okay. So here also like passively carried Next coming is the features of the water pollinated plants. So obviously it's just like the previous one. The flowers are without odor, nectar, color, same pollen grains are lightweighted with mucilage covering. So now this is a highlight point in this case, with mucilage covering. So now what does mucilage covering signify? Well, like, why is it there? Mucilage covering is there to protect the pollen grain from the surrounding sea water or water. Okay. Okay, so obviously, what did we see that water pollination is extremely rare and is observed in aquatic plants only. So obviously the plants are in, surrounded by water throughout. So the mucilage covering is there to protect the pollen grains from the surrounding water so that like anyhow it is not destroyed. Okay. Stigma is long, sticky, and unweightable. So you can clearly understand it is long, sticky, and unweightable so that it enhances the capture of pollen grains. So in this case the pollen grains are being carried by the water currents. So the stigma has to be long so that it can, it has a wider area, it can grab more amount of pollen grains. It has to be sticky so that the pollen grain doesn't get drained off. Okay, and it is unweightable. Okay. And in this case also, sometimes you observe specialized mechanisms is adopted by the aquatic plants. So we have covered the non-living agents. Now coming to living agents. So living agents are comparatively short. Why I'm telling it is short? Because you have to study in detail only two of them, and they are easy. Like you guys must have studied it earlier classes. So coming to living agents, we have to study in detail insect pollination, okay, that is entomophily, and bird pollination, that is ornithophily. Okay. So before going into detail, I'm just quickly covering the others I had mentioned. First is pollination by bat. They are known as Chiropterophily. Examples include Anthocephalus and Adansonia. This is pollinated by bat. Next we have pollination by snail, that is Malacophily. Example, they're pretty easy: Arum and Erythema. Okay, this is also known as cobra plant. Okay, this is also known as cobra plant. And third, we have snake pollinated, that we have Ophiophily. And the plants, it is Chandan, Santalum, album. Okay, so let me just erase this underline underneath Chandan so that you guys don't confuse. Obviously, Chandan is not the scientific name. It's a common name that we use. So, okay, so among insect, so under insect, I had also mentioned ants and honeybees, right? So we have ant. So ant is known as Myrmecophily, and the plant they pollinate is mango. Obviously, you know the scientific name, Mangifera indica. And the next one is honeybee, Melitophily, mustard. Mustard, you would also know Brassica campestris. So they fall under insect pollination. Okay. So now we are going to cover characteristics of insect pollinated plants. So insect pollinated plants, the phenomenon, as I already mentioned, is entomophily. I have already given you two examples, like the pollination by honeybees and pollination by ants. So you can take the examples. And now if I come to the characteristics of insect pollinated plants, see they are already given in the NCERT. Okay. First is flowers are large, colorful, fragrant, rich in nectar. So I have already discussed that the flowers are colorful and fragrant to attract to attract its particular insect pollinator. Okay, they are rich in nectar because nectar acts as a reward. Okay, I've covered that as well. The flowers are large. Okay, okay. Just going through NCERT lines. When the flowers are small, a number of flowers are clustered into an inflorescence to make them conspicuous. The animals are attracted to flowers by the color and of fragrance. I've told about that. Okay, this is important. Flowers pollinated by flies and beetles, they secrete foul odor, like bad smell. Okay, so it is not always that all the flowers fragrance is good. Okay, some flowers intentionally secrete foul odor to attract its respective pollinator, that is flies and beetles. But apart from that, you observe sweet fragrance, strong color, presence of nectar. The flowers rich in nectar to act as and attract the respective pollinators. Okay, nectar and pollen grains are the usual floral rewards. I've already discussed that the flowers give floral respective rewards to the pollinators. So the pollinators are coming, they are doing the work of pollination for the plant. So in return, the flower is giving a reward in the form of nectar and pollen grains. Okay. For harvesting the reward from the flower, the animal visitor comes in contact with the anther and stigma. The body of the animal gets a coating of pollen grains, which are sticky in animal pollinated flowers. So here, and the next point that we observe, the pollen grains are sticky so that they can easily stick onto the body surface of the insects as well as in birds. Okay, so the line says generally stick in animal pollinated flowers. So insect pollinated flowers and all from animal pollinated flowers, we will observe that the pollen grains are sticky. Okay, when the animal carrying pollen on its body comes in contact with the stigma, it brings about pollination. This is, I think, very clear. In some species, the floral. Okay, huh. So in majority of the species, the floral rewards are in providing safe places to lay eggs. So this is also important stuff. So the floral rewards. So yeah, okay, huh. Before that, I think just let me do one thing. Let me mention ornithophilia over here. So when birds are acting as a pollinating agent, they are known as ornithophilia. So I'm sticking to the NCERT. NCERT says majority of flowering plants use a range of animals of pollinating agents: bees, butterflies, flies, beetles, wasps, and moth, bird. Birds include sunbirds and hummingbirds. Okay, so let me write this in the slide as well. Sunbirds and hummingbirds. Okay. And bats are the common pollinating agents. Among the animals, insects, particularly bees, are the dominant biotic pollinating agents. We have covered that. Even larger animals like lemurs, arboreal, rodents, or even reptiles have also been reported as pollinators in some species. So it is my request to you guys and girls, please go through all the particular examples given in NCERT and do learn them. Okay, questions might come. Okay, so we have covered the examples. We have covered the biological phenomena. Okay, so I was there in the last topic. There is a floral rewards. So one other floral reward can be safe place to lay eggs. Floral reward can be pollen and nectar. Okay, so let us read the NCERT. Floral rewards are in providing safe places to lay eggs. As example is that of the tallest flower of Amorphophallus. A similar relationship exists between a species of moth and the plant yucca. This is very important. The example of yucca is very, very important, where both the species, the moth and the plant, cannot complete their life cycle without each other. The moth deposits its egg in the locule of the ovary, and the flower in turn gets pollinated by the moth. The larvae of the moth comes out of the egg as the seeds start developing. So I'm, giving a highlight. Moth and yucca. So keep this in mind. Okay. See, and here in the next page you will find many insects may consume pollen or the nectar without bringing about pollination. Such floral visitors are referred to as pollen and nectar robbers. So here is another highlight point: pollen or nectar robbers. So what do? They consume the pollen, they consume the nectar, but they don't bring about pollinate, they don't cause pollination. So they're not acting as a pollinator, but they're consuming the pollen, they're consuming the nectar. So they are known as pollen and nectar robbers. Okay. So we have completed pollination, kinds of pollination, agents of pollination. So the next day, we are going to start with outbreeding devices, pollen-pestle interaction, and proceed forward. This is a very interesting topic, a very comparatively easy topic. So it's my request to you. So after watching this lecture, read the NCERT, go through each and every single example given there. So you see, pollination is like, even we can act as pollinating agents. So, you brush your hands over, for example, you have a hibiscus. Okay, so you brush your hands over the anther, see the pollen will stick on your hand. Then you put it on the stigmatic surface of, another hibiscus. So you are also acting as a pollinating agent in this case. But we are not the usual pollinators. The usual pollinators, the primary annual pollinators have been mentioned in NCERT, and I have given significant number of examples of snail, snake, ant, honeybee, birds, etc. and etc. Go through all the examples, read the lecture notes, read NCERT, and you are going to be good to go. So the next day we are going to start with outbreeding devices, pollen-pestle interaction, and proceed forward. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Continue studying. All the very best, and my best wishes always. Thank you.